Hi, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend and you are ready for midterm week. So I wanted to come on and give you some announcements, some tips, some encouragement to make sure that you feel prepared for the midterm. So I'm going to go over the midterm, give you all of the important details, and then just check in about our upcoming assignments, research proposal, all of that. I want to go over a couple of the multiple choice questions from this week and last week, ones that I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood and then leave you with your checklist for the week. So the midterm. So the midterm is due by next Sunday, by the end of the day. So here is what you need to know. So you will access the midterm in iCollege, and it is over these chapters in the textbook. So 1 through 13, but except chapter 3 and chapter 9. So those chapters were optional about action research and about questionnaires, but the other chapters are the chapters that will be covered on the midterm. Of course, you can use your textbook as you take the course and the exam and as you study, but those are the chapters to review. So it will be in iCollege. So on the announcements just below where you clicked for this video, you will see a link to click and access the exam. It is in iCollege. So it is 20 questions. 10 of them are multiple choice, just like we practice every week on the perusal. And 10 of them are short answer, again, just like we practice in the perusal. So this week, there's also a study guide in perusal. I'll go over there in a moment, and it has similar questions, so you can prepare that way. So you have 180 minutes to complete the midterm. So when you open this announcement on Monday, don't just go ahead and click the midterm. Wait until you've studied, until you have time to sit down and take it in one sitting. So I recommend that you go through the perusal. There's a lecture video reviewing everything that I want you to understand for the midterm. Go through the slides, practice the questions. If you can, come to the Zoom on Thursday and then set aside your time to take the exam after you've studied to take it in that setting. So it is 180 minutes. If you don't finish in that time, keep going. It won't stop you. So keep going, go ahead and finish. It will give me a note and let me know how long it took you. So do keep going, go ahead and finish. And just email me if you have any issues with that or if something happens while you're taking the exam to let me know. You can use, of course, your books, you can use your notes, you can use any of the old perusals that you have done. You can use all of that as you take the exam to help you. And there is a study guide in perusal. So let me go over to perusal to show you that, because there are review questions that you could do, multiple choice questions that you can do, short answer questions, slides, and a lecture from me. And this perusal is also worth 3 points, so you can earn your participation points while studying. So let me go over to the perusal. So in the perusal, you will see the midterm review. So there is the lecture video here, and in the lecture video, I'm going through the slides that I prepared. These slides have all the most important points that I want to make sure that you understand. So obviously, those are the topics that will be covered most closely on the exam. This is also a great way to review all of the chapters we've covered so far. And if there's any topics that you don't feel sure about, you can leave me a note in perusal. I'll be in the perusal this week answering questions for any of those concepts that you want me to review with you further. So that is the lecture. And then these are the slides. These are the slides that I'm going over in the lecture. So this is a great place to just go through your vocabulary, leave a comment for me if there's anything that you want me to clarify. And again, this is great to have open when you are actually taking the midterm, to have this open so you can refer to your vocabulary and have that ready to go for you. And then these are the study guide questions. So these are similar to the short answer study guide questions that you will have on the midterm. Again, there's 10 of these. So for the review questions, you can see I organized them by chapter. So that can tell you what chapter to look into in the text. This can also help you on the midterm as well, because I put a similar question on the study guide that's on the midterm. Now, it might be a multiple choice or short answer. It might be a different format on the study guide versus the midterm, but there is a similar question for each. But that can help you, because if you, let's say that there is this question about correlation coefficient and you remember that from the study guide, you get it as a multiple choice question. It can tell you chapter 2 if you need to look back and refer there. And then the multiple choice questions. Now, the multiple choice questions, you cannot leave a comment for me, but if there is a multiple choice question that you want me to comment on in the perusal, you can leave that here or in the lecture, anywhere. You could say, could you please explain number 2 on the multiple choice? So that is what you have to study with, and you have the lecture video, of course, your book. Now, I'm also going to be doing a Zoom this week. The Zoom is going to be on Thursday at 6 p.m. And so at this Zoom, I'm just going to be going over all of the topics, the questions, reviewing, answering any questions. So if you get a chance to study before Thursday, you can bring any notes to the Zoom with any questions or topics or chapters that you want me to go over, and we can review together. But in the past, people have found the Zoom really helpful. So if you can, that will be this Thursday at 6 p.m. So the midterm, I think that you will do really well. So again, it's 10 points. So the course is out of 100 points. So it's 10 points, but every perusal is worth 3 points. So if you miss, and every question is worth half a point. So if you miss 4 questions on the midterm, you're still going to get a score of 8 out of 10. And that still has you on track for an A in the course overall. So I want you to do well on the midterm. I want you to use it to check for understanding, what you know, what you understand, but don't get too overwhelmed and stressed out about it. Do email me if you're feeling that way, so I can just give you some pointers and put it into perspective. So it's meant to be a review, a check-in for all of us, just to see what concepts we need to go over. And do reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns about that. But this is 10 points out of a total 100 for the course for the whole semester. So do keep that in mind if you're starting to feel overwhelmed. Okay, so this is another study guide that will be helpful for you. This is what I want you to focus on for each chapter. So, and I talk about this too in the review lectures. So when you watch that, you'll see that. But for each chapter, these are the items that I want you to focus on, making sure that you understand. So if you want to screenshot this, or it is, like I mentioned in the lecture too. Okay, so that is the midterm. That'll be the focus for this week. So no new reading. And hopefully that you find that helpful, that the perusal this week is the study guide for the midterm. And so again, you can take the midterm anytime throughout this week, whenever you feel ready. Just make sure that you have a set amount of time to finish those 20 questions in one sitting. And it is due by end of the day, Sunday. So again, you will definitely need this for the midterm. I know that I've been coming back to this point. This is so important for our course, understanding research design, research methodology. We have quantitative research and qualitative research. Quantitative research is confirmatory, it is deductive. It is, the purpose is to predict or identify causes. That's one of the questions. What's the purpose of each type of research? And it is based on hypothesis testing. So it relies on statistics to test whether or not there is evidence to support or not to support, or if the evidence does not support a hypothesis. So it starts off with a hypothesis, you collect data to test that hypothesis, and then you use statistical analysis to either accept or reject that hypothesis. So starting off with your hypothesis, and then qualitative research is exploratory or inductive, and the purpose of it is to describe or explain. So it is making observations, then studying those observations for patterns, making conclusions and generalizations about the pattern. So those are a few of the concepts that you will definitely need to know. So that is, oh, then here's just another slide about research designs, qualitative versus quantitative. Qualitative is descriptive and it is focused on understanding phenomenon, and it relies on interpretation of the data like coding, can help you describe, predict, or explain. And then here are some of the data sources that are commonly used in qualitative research versus quantitative. Again, it uses numerical data or categorical data, but it is focused on testing hypotheses using statistical analysis. So it can predict or explain, and then in the case of experimental research, identify causes. So here are some of the data sources that you will use commonly in quantitative design. So that is the midterm. And so we will complete that this week. And then after that, we'll move on to the second half of the semester. So next week on October 8th, on our announcement, I'll be talking about our upcoming assignment. Our article critique is our next big assignment after the midterm. So I'll be talking about that in depth next week, but that is due October 25th, just to help you organize your time in the coming weeks, but I'll go over that next week. And I did link the sample if you want to take a look at what that is going to look like. That is in the announcements this week if you want to look at an example. But again, next week in our announcement, I'll go into depth about that assignment, how to complete it, and the expectations. And then after that, we have another check-in for your research proposal. Now, many of you have been reaching out to me, talking further about your research proposal project or even the perusal. So that's great. Feel free to do that. I am so pleased to hear that you're thinking about the research proposal project as you're completing the readings and throughout the process. We are going to have another ungraded check-in November 1st. So I'll be also talking about that and reminding you where to find the template and the components for that. So a couple of the multiple choice questions I want to go over. So first, I'm going to go over a few questions from perusal number 5 from chapters 10 and 11. So in chapters 10 and 11, we talked about sampling, and sampling is the method that researchers use to choose their participants. And in chapter 10, they did outline methods for sampling or choosing participants for both quantitative and qualitative. So based on what you're planning or what you are reading or analyzing, you can refer to those different methods for each different type of research, each different design. So random sampling is a sampling method that is used in experimental design or quantitative design. So when you have a random sample, you have to be, they mentioned several different examples of these in the book where you are assigning numbers and you have a method to pick randomly. So that would be C, numbering all the elements and using a random number table to pick them. And with the technology that we have, there's so many different ways, computer programs that can do this for you automatically, but that is what the technical statistics behind random sampling entails, is numbering them and then using the random number generator to choose it. And if you've taken a statistics class, you may have done this by hand to know what that means. So then on the qualitative side, when the researcher is looking for people with a particular characteristic, like maybe orchestra teachers who teach middle school or harp teachers of high school, like you have the particular characteristics that you're looking for. And then they are recruiting them until they get the number that they want. That would be considered quota sampling because you have a particular number that you want to find. Now, snowball sampling is when you have, you're looking for participants who are within a specific niche. And so once you have a participant or two, you ask them, is there anyone else that you think would be a great participant? Do you know anyone else who would have insight on this topic. For instance, if you were doing like the harp teachers of high school, if you wanted to know what a phenomenology of what it's like to be a harp teacher, you might say, thank you so much. Do you know anyone else who might be a great person to give insight onto the experience of being a harp teacher? So snowball sampling is when members are recommending other people that, based on their insider knowledge, would also know about the topic. This next one was an example about children who are using a strategy to solve word problems. And then they start off by screening the children to see if they already know the strategy. And so he wants to only choose those who have not yet learned the strategy. So that would be purposeful sampling because we're looking for children who do not know the strategy. So in mixed design, you might have two different samples. This was another great question that some people had. Sometimes in mixed research, you use the same sample and sometimes it's different samples. So in this instance, they have two different samples for each component, but they come from, of course, the same population. So since they are coming from the same population, we have those together and they are both together from the same sample there. And then an extraneous variable. So an extraneous variable is any variable other than the independent variable that might influence the dependent variable. So in quantitative research, there's often many different potentially confounding variables, in an extraneous variable that is a variable that can influence it, that is not what you are trying to isolate. And so the chapter that we read this week talked about some of the controls that researchers can do and the methods researchers can do to control for potentially confounding variables or extraneous variables. So that was, a few more here. So the next one was about an experiment, memory strategies. So in this one, the assistant is unknowingly runs controls only in the afternoon and the experimental group in the morning. So since the time of day, it could be a potentially confounding variable because it could influence the results, and it could not be the actual independent variable that's causing it, but it could be the time of day. So that's an example of a confounding variable, or what an example of what an extraneous variable could look like. So then we talked a lot about reliability and validity. So when the researcher can draw clear conclusions from what went on in the study, that would be strong internal validity. So internal validity means that the conclusions are based on what actually the data that was drawn from the study, and they can use their methods to show that and explain that. And then reflexivity is when the researcher is able to reflect about the research and about themselves and about the impact and the influence that they have on the results and how that might influence their interpretation. Okay, and lastly, number 10. So here we have, and this was another question that someone asked about the methods of legitimation in mixed research. So there are several different examples there in the text. And for those of you interested in mixed research, you can refer to those for the methods that you would use to demonstrate reliability and validity. So here we can see it's concerned about the amount of time so the study is about delaying gratification, amount of time between when the person saw the food and when they would eat it. And then they were interviewed about their reactions. So here you can see that they are giving their own the participant is able to talk about their own. So you can see that that is sequential because they are giving their data both. They're giving the original data, and then afterwards they are coming back to explain their reactions and give that. So I think that that's a method that a few people were interested in doing as well, is having a survey and then an interview about it afterwards. Okay, so here are a few questions from perusal 6, chapters 12 and 13. So the first one is about experimental control and what control means in quantitative design. So when you are doing that experimental control, you're trying to eliminate the influence of extraneous variables or potentially confounding variables. So if there is another factor that could be causing the change you're seeing, you are able to control for that, so you can isolate the effect of the independent variable. So when you are using a method, a sampling method like random assignment, and then using a control method such as matching, you're trying to equate the groups and make sure that they are statistically similar, again, to isolate the independent variable. So in this example, the extraneous or potentially confounding variable is socioeconomic status. So they choose only children from a low SES home, and that is holding the extraneous variable constant. That way, you know that you are looking at that cannot be what's causing it, because all of the students in the sample are from the same economic background. So in an experiment, the characteristic that defines an experiment is the variables are manipulated in a controlled environment. So an experiment has to have manipulation of the variables. And then quasi-experimental design, it does have manipulation, but it does not have random assignment. It's either not ethical or not feasible, or it's just impossible. So you can use quasi-experimental design in those situations. And then the statistical technique or method that you're using when you have non-equivalent groups and you want to statistically control, that's an ANCOVA that you use to control and make sure that the extraneous variable is not causing the difference that you're seeing between the experimental group and the control group, but rather that you are, again, isolating that independent variable. Okay, so if you have, then the last one was about selection history. So this is if there is an unplanned event during the data collection process. Like, let's say that you are giving students, they're taking like their end of, you've designed some type of post-test that they take after receiving the intervention. And when they're taking the post-test, there's a fire drill during the middle of data collection. So that would be something that could potentially affect the data that is outside of the research design. It's like a history event that happened in the midst of data collection. So a selection history event. Okay, so if you have other questions about any multiple choice questions that I missed or that you wanted me to go over, please reach out to me for those. And here is your checklist for the week. So by next Sunday, you are completing the midterm. Also perusal number 7. Of course, if you recall, we have 14 perusals. I am grading 12 of those. So if you get sick one week or need to skip one for one reason, that will not affect your grade in a negative way. But this one is a great one to do because it's no extra reading and you're going to want to study anyway. Then our upcoming assignments after the midterm, I'll go over the article critique and show you how to do that. Then we'll have a research proposal check-in, and of course, the optional Zoom this week, if you're able to make it, will be Thursday at 6 p.m. And the Zoom link is in iCollege in the announcements. So good luck. You'll do amazing on the midterm, and please email me if you have any questions. Bye.